Since we're talking about rolling, the first thing that we have to talk about are precautions. Rolling is not going to be for everyone. When you're reorienting the body upside down, rolling over, there's elements of turning and twisting. There's a lot of shifting. There's a lot of gut movement that's associated with this. And so people will get dizzy and they will get nauseous. So use this at your own risk. But the thing that I want you to understand is that we don't have to put people on the table to provide us an element of movement-based diagnosis for people that are personal trainers or strength and conditioning coaches. All we have to do is understand what elements of movement are available and what should happen during a forward and a backward rolling situation. If we can understand that, then we can apply these across the board. So as your clients are warming up for their physical activity, or as they're performing these activities as an element of their training, we can use the rolling patterns to restore and enhance motion that they may have lost during training. So very simply, we're going to just use the rock and roll first. The first element that we need to understand is a backward rock is going to be an inhalation strategy to assume that movement and position. The rock back up is going to be an exhalation. So now we can superimpose breathing on top of the rock and roll to emphasize the element that we're trying to alter. So if someone is going to be able to inhale, they should be able to rock fully backwards up to the base of the neck. So we don't want to roll up over the neck, but we are going to roll up through the entire dorsal rostral thorax, so that the top of the shoulder is the base of the neck. That's our inhalation strategy. The exhalation strategy is actually going to be the return to the sitting position, so we can emphasize that as well. So if we have someone that is biased towards inhalation, we want to make sure that they're exhaling fully and forcefully to allow them to return to the seated position, okay? So what I'm going to have now is have the Padawan demonstrate a little bit of the rock and roll, and I want you to try to listen closely. We'll have him overemphasize his breathing just a little bit so he can demonstrate the entire rock and roll. So inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale to return. So let's break down the forward roll first. So we're going to go off the right shoulder. Now we're going to bias half the body in one direction and half the body in the other direction, with the understanding that the forward roll itself is going to be an exhalation strategy to assume the position and perform the movement. Go ahead and set yourself up for a right shoulder roll. So the right shoulder roll requires that the right shoulder be internally rotated and the left shoulder will be externally rotated. So we have exhalation on the right posterior, inhalation on the left posterior. Go ahead and roll. In addition to the shoulder, we also have to keep in mind that we have to position the head and the neck appropriately. And so this is going to require that we have normal neck rotation. But keep in mind, just like as we mentioned in the thorax, where we have one side inhaling and one side exhaling, the neck is no different. So as Mike sets himself up again for the right shoulder roll, remember that we have right shoulder internal rotation, left shoulder external rotation. This requires that we have left lower cervical rotation as an element of position and movement to allow him to accomplish the right shoulder roll. As Mike performs the right shoulder roll, we have an exhalation strategy posteriorly on the right side of the body. We have an inhalation posteriorly on the left side of the body, and he will continue that throughout the entire roll. So as he comes up to sit onto his left hip, the left hip will be in a position of left inhalation posteriorly. So this is the left inhaled position for the hip. The left inhaled position of the hip requires that Mike has external rotation to the hip. So to land the right shoulder forward roll, he must have inhalation posteriorly on the left shoulder, inhalation posteriorly on the left hip, inhalation on the left side of the neck, which allows him to turn his head to the left. So obviously, if Mike was going to do a left shoulder roll, we would just flip-flop the opposing strategies, with the understanding that a forward roll is going to be biased towards exhalation overall, so he can close off the front side and assume the position and the movement. Now, for the backward roll, we're going to be biasing towards inhalation strategies overall. However, one concept that carries over whether we're doing a forward or a backward roll is that the shoulder that you roll over is the exhaled side. So as Mike's going to do a backward shoulder roll over the right shoulder, posteriorly, the right shoulder and right hip are in the exhaled position, and the left shoulder and the left hip are going to be in the inhaled position. So let's talk a little bit about diagnostics here. So anybody that is limited in their ability to exhale, so think a wide infrasternal angle, somebody that's using a compensatory inhalation strategy will typically have difficulty rolling forward, or instead of a smooth motion, what you'll see is you'll see a very choppy, sort of like a clunky forward roll. They will also have a lot of difficulty because of their inability to exhale on the front side. They'll have a great deal of difficulty with shoulder flexion and cervical rotation because on the posterior aspect of their body, they are primarily exhaled. So that side is compressed. So again, it's very, very difficult for them to roll. Wide ISAs will also have a tendency to roll at a much more flatter diagonal. So if you watch enough people roll, you'll start to understand and learn how to recognize a wide ISA's roll compared to a narrow. From a training aspect, if I have somebody that can't roll backwards, so they cannot inhale as they roll backwards over a shoulder, chances are that side will be compressed. If that side is compressed, you will have a limitation in shoulder flexion on that side and an inability to turn the head effectively in that direction using the lower cervical spine. That might be someone that you choose not to press overhead on that side because they're lacking the requisite shoulder flexion. So if you observe enough people, you will be able to carry this diagnostic over to the active roll. Obviously, again, if we use the ISA as a representation of what their capabilities will be, the narrow ISAs will have a tendency to roll a little bit more straight over or vertically because of the orientation of the musculature of the axial skeleton. It's just a natural byproduct. They will have a tendency to be able to roll backwards a little bit more effectively than your wide ISAs because they're already biased towards inhalation on the backside of their body. So because of the reduced lordosis, because of their ability to expand the thorax, they'll be able to roll backwards a little bit more effectively. For someone that has an inability to rock and roll back up to the seated position easily, what you may find is this is a person that has difficulty with exercises like a hinge. So a deadlifter, a Romanian deadlift, or a kettlebell swing might be much more challenging for these people because they don't have an exhalation strategy. They can't nutate the sacrum, and they can't perform a hip hinge effectively. One thing to keep in mind when we're talking about rolling patterns, these are not absolutes. You're not going to be perfect or clear on every movement-based diagnosis that you're going to get out of a roll. What this is something to help you make better decisions. Okay, so there will be people that can roll against their patterns effectively. There will be people that will be able to demonstrate things that you think that they shouldn't be able to demonstrate. So keep that in mind. This is not an absolute. This is a way to help you make better decisions. Obviously, there's many applications to using these rolling patterns. So if you have any questions about any of the rolling patterns that you saw today or have any other suggestions, please post them in the comments section and we'll answer those questions as they arrive.